Wêreldwyd geld inperkingsmatreëls in 'n poging om die verspreiding van die Cornavirus te probeer bekamp. Inperking is in talle demokrasieë 'n netelige kwessie.
It is usually rare, really, where the exercising the right of the individual is of detriment to the group.
Individual rights and the common good, it could be a false dichotomy. There needs to be a balance between the common good in terms of public health and healthcare and the common good in terms of the economy.
It would be naive to think that we live in a world with no trade-offs where civil liberties or your own individual freedom will never, come against perhaps the greater good. You need to put in place public intervention. But I think it's very important to be clear about what those trade-offs are.
Die probleem met onze president is, niks wat hy sê gaan reg wees nie. Ongelukkig. Jy weet of hy nou sê ons moet oopmaak of hy sê ons moet toebly, hy gaan maar altyd op die verkeerde kant van baie mense wees en dis eintlik net hoe moeilik die situasie is.
Die regulasies word gemaak om ook mense wat nie siek is nie in te perk byvoorbeeld. Ek dink dit is waar die kop skuif moeilik raak. Jy kan sien, regulasies is dalk nodig om siek mense te reguleer of om seker te maak dat daar hospitaalbeddens is of dat daar protective gear is, maar hoekom word ons wat gesond is so gereguleer? Ek dink dit is waar die ongemak inkom en dan begin die vraag gevra te word, maar is hierdie magte wat daai wet gee vir die minister? Is dit nie ongelooflik wyd en ongelooflik indringend nie?
We've got to try and think about the long-term greater good as well. There might be a bias towards short-term consequences. So we can imagine the immediate health consequences of COVID-19, but it's harder for us to imagine the long-term health consequences of shutting down the economy. When we talk about the economy, it's not just an abstract notion. It is the ability of ordinary people to put food on the table.
Deel van hierdie dikwels ook miskien 'n reflex, wat is die Afrikaans vir 'n knee-jerk reaksie teen die reëls wat ons nou moet nakom, is miskien daardie ongemak van ons tot nou toe kon ons self reël presies wat ons wil doen, ons die mark het vir ons daardie veilige ruimte geskep, dit word nou ondermyn, en ek dink dit lei dan soms tot heel oordrewe sienings soos, ons is nou binne 'n stalinistiese tyd, of die regering is nazi's, dit is woorde wat nou gebruik word om ons demokraties verkose regering uit te kry.
The public health context always raises questions about individual versus collective interests, and the reason for that is what a famous epidemiologist called Jeffrey Rose coined the paradox of prevention. Particularly in the context of preventive measures. People have to take steps that are of minimal benefit to them and maybe of a cost to them in order for a large collective benefit. You are expected to stay home, the reason being there's a public good, and that applies to you even if you're 25 or 45, and the chances of dying of this disease are small. And the question is then, what is the situation in which we can justify that? And my argument is and has been that we don't have a good enough reason to take the steps we have been taking. That's been one of my arguments, particularly with reference to people living in very uncomfortable conditions who, frankly, if you try and confine them to their very small dwellings, it amounts to a form of imprisonment. It isn't like being in a nice suburban house. If you're sharing a shack with 10 other people, being forced to stay there becomes a form of punishment. And I think given the fact that most of those people will be dead of other causes before they reach the age at which risk of COVID-19 goes up significantly, average life expectancy is in the region of the 60s.
Ons stem nou saam oor wat is die greater good noodwendig nie. Is dit om die COVID-dode te probeer minimaliseer, of is dit om te probeer om die ekonomie aan te gaan? Is dit so binêr? Kan die twee goed nie opgeweeg word nie? Wat van ander goed soos regte, wat van ander goed soos ons geestestoestand, wat van ander goed soos onderwys, wat ook in die prentjie inkom. Ek dink ons het 'n baie binêre gesprek as ons praat van lewensred of ekonomie, want ek dink daar's 'n klomp ander goed wat ook in die prentjie behoort te kom.
Nou, die regering het hierdie mite dat ons hier moet kies aan die een kant tussen die ekonomie en mense se lewens, maar die twee goed is so vervleg in mekaar, dat ek is bekommerd dat die wyse waarop die regering dit op die oomblik hanteer, is dat mense wat gaan doodgaan as gevolg van honger, en die impak op mense se lewens baie groter gaan wees as die siekte self.
When it comes to the greater good, my answer to that would be the question has already been answered in 1994 already, when we said that things like, apartheid, for example, like the architects thought it was for the greater good of everyone. So it wasn't, and so for that, and it ended up having bad consequences because it restricts free civil liberties. And so that's why we ended up rejecting that kind of greater good argument as South Africans, because we understood that it really doesn't work in practice. It ends up causing more problems than it solves.
It really should be more about the common good, about the fact that we are all in this together. We're all experiencing it differently. And we have different concerns and fears, but we are in it together.
Wat nou baie duidelik na vore gekom het, uit ook statistiek wat mens kry, is dat volgehoue inperking nie meer die beste oplossing is nie. Ons moet maniere kry om voort te gaan. Ons kan nie vir die volgende 3 jaar onsself toegrendel nie. Die feit is, ons moet mense toelaat om te werk. En daar's 'n paar goed wat mense wel moet doen. Ons verstaan heeltemal dat mens moet optree om mense se gesondheid te beskerm.
One of the interesting things, by the way, about this whole context is that it has put some pressure on the political left, in my view, which tends to be where academics are positioned. Because the academic community has tended to be pro-lockdown until more recently. At least the vocal elements of it. And it has been hard within the scientific and academic community to voice anti-lockdown sentiments of any kind. That has been seen as a somewhat right-wing sentiment, but clearly the people who are expressing those sentiments are almost all doing so on the basis of that it's actually in the interests of the poorest people to not lock down, and that the people who will benefit most from lockdown are the richer people. One of the really striking things about this is that the interventions we have done have been redistributive, but regressively. They have moved the burden of the disease off wealthier people in wealthier regions and onto poorer people and younger people in poorer and younger regions. So because of what is going on now in Africa, more African children will die. If that had not happened, and COVID-19 had spread more, then more older people in Europe and more older people in Africa, who tend to also be white in this country. The life expectancy is higher among white people in the country, would have died. So what has been done for the sake of the nation and the region has in fact shifted the burden of mortality.
Elke keer as jy sê, as jy wil sê, eers maar die manier hoe besluite geneem word, dan sê mense vir jou bly stil, dis die regte ding. En ek kan dink is die regte ding om te doen, en ek kan dink is die verkeerde manier wat dit gedoen word. Dat ons nie gedink het oor hoe ons besluite neem nie. En dit is baie belangrik om ons besluite neem. Een, omdat dit iets sê van wie en wat ons is, en ook omdat die besluite gaan waarskynlik aanhou. Van hierdie besluite gaan bly staan nadat die pandemie verby is, en veral die manier van besluitneming.